that clearly like this kind of entertainment. They're the people that like horror and comics and horror films, dark genre kind of entertainment, and people who like magic, but like magic that's not exactly the traditional kind of stuff. Because some of it's steeped in tradition in terms of some of the illusions, but they are all very much taken to a place where they really haven't gone before as stylistically. So the audience really likes it. And I'll get everything from, like I say, sometimes there's certain things where people will gasp at some of the things. And, but I will get a range of great, reactions that run from, laughter and applause, and it runs the gamut of all of that. And like I say, sometimes it's just, they can be quite shocked at times, and that's kind of the nature of illusion, in the first place, where, we're trying to surprise you, but I'm also trying to surprise you and maybe gross you out a little bit in places there, kind of push your buttons.
Well, it does sound like it a little bit there,
Yes. Yeah.
What is the age of your audience, normally?
Well, I do perform. I do a lot of things, especially some of my public shows that are open to everybody. I would put it at easily a PG-13 rating, like 13 and over, I would say. But, a lot of my audience is older since I perform in a lot of theaters, clubs, and nightclubs and things like that, and places where they serve alcohol. I think a lot of my audience is clearly 21 and up.
Uh-huh. So
yeah. But there's a lot of teenagers that like it and everything too, because that kind of speaks to the horror films and things that they like.
Well, let's face it. Like the TV show, like The Walking Dead, and the Fear of the and on all that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got like the Sci-Fi Channel, and then the Comet, which shows like the old B, horror type
Mm-hmm.
movies. But people love that stuff. I hate to say it. I hate to say. When there's a car accident, people gather up, and it seems like they all are waiting to see who died, So people are kind of into, horror one way or another.
Yeah, there is that fascination with it. But at least when it's on screen or when it's on television or on stage, in my case, as well, then people can look at it and it's safe to watch because it's presented as entertainment. It's not real. It's like The Walking Dead or something like that. You don't have to worry about being up to your eyeballs in the zombie apocalypse. They'll do it for you, and then they'll just show it to you on the screen. They'll show it to you on television. So even though it might make you entirely nervous and even grossed out, and even laugh sometimes at it, because even that has threads of humor that run through it. Even that, it's that's been the tradition of horror, that even though you go to be frightened and to be grossed out by some of it, it's safe because that's just up on the screen and it's not going to come out into your seat and get you.
Yeah.
So, but it is fun to see that, and it is such a huge part of our culture now. Like I say, it's when I started this, it was not. It has kind of grown with me. So it's interesting that the market and the audience has kind of come around to what I'm doing, because I was doing this before it was the most, before it was as fashionable as it is now.
Oh yeah. What type of places do you perform at?
All kinds of things. I mean, back in my career, I was early on. I worked with a producer by the name of Paul Osborne, who's worked with so many of the huge names in the magic and illusion business, all the way to David Copperfield. He had worked with him quite a bit, all the way back in the 80s, and he was the first guy that took magic into amusement parks. He's the reason there is Fright Fest and all that stuff today. He pitched it, to Six Flags, and I was one of the first guys that was, I was working with him then, and he packaged myself and a bunch of his other entertainers and everything up, and he took us into Six Flags over Texas. And we went down there for a couple of seasons, for all of October, and that's where all that started. That's why all of the amusement parks now, are open through October and do, Halloween and everything, because he was the first guy to go out there and go, there's a big market here and you want to, produce shows for him. And so I was one of the first guys, along with him, leading the way as producer of all of this entertainment, to go in and bring that to the amusement park industry. So it goes all the way back from that. And I've done countless, nightclubs and theaters. I've done a college tour. And I do a lot of horror conventions and different kind of genre conventions now, horror and pop culture, Comic-Cons, things like that. I'm doing a lot of that now because I'm also featured in a comic book called The Haunting Tales of Bachelor's Grove, which is all of the stories are based out of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, just outside of Chicago, which is very one of the very famous haunted spaces in America now. And the comic book features a couple of characters that are actually based on real people. One is myself as the Master of the Realm. The other is Kadrosha Ona, the Queen of the Paranormal. And we're featured in this comic series, Haunting Tales of Bachelor's Grove, put out by Silver Phoenix Entertainment. And
wow.
So that gets me some interest from the comic and pop culture side as well for what I'm doing.
Wow. And how many years you been doing this now professionally, Ron?
Oh, many decades now. Many moons. I've been doing, this style of show for about 25, 30 years, easily. And then, I had a career, doing, local things well before that. So a long time. I've been at this for a long, long time. Like I say, I was developing and doing this kind of stuff before it was really as fashionable as it is now. And there's a tradition. There's some guys like, Rich Yardy and bizarrists, the guys that are known as bizarre magicians like Tony Andruzzi or Eugene Berger, that kind of dark, Rich Yardy was actually an illusionist. And the other fellows, the bizarrists like Tony Andruzzi, they did smaller magic, but it was all based, in storytelling, and it was all dark and kind of occult and supernatural tales that went along with their magic, and that. So it's built on a tradition of that kind of theatrical magic, and then I just kind of ran with it from there, and I took it further into the horror genre.
Well, right now, I think that's probably the best thing you could have done because, I hate to say it, that's where this generation is really focused at. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have, like The Walking Dead and stuff like that. I mean, People are really infatuated with the paranormal. When I first started out in broadcasting, I first started out as a DJ playing Top 40, and then after that I started doing some talk shows. And, and I probably didn't have one of the first talk shows, but I had a talk show in the mid-'70s, and it was all paranormal. But it didn't last too long because I didn't realize the station was owned by Mormons. And
that probably didn't go over too great with them.
Well, I didn't know that. They told me, when they hired me, just do your talk show like you normally do. So I started doing paranormal. And I guess they tolerated it for about maybe a month. And all of a sudden, they said, hey, you got to change it. And I go, I can't change it. I mean, you have more listeners now than you've ever had. And the owner of the station goes, well, I don't care. I'm Mormon. And this is rubbing everything wrong with me with him. And I'm going, well, I'm sorry, but, I do believe in certain aspects of the paranormal. And paranormal has really grown. I mean, if you go on the internet,
huge now.
You'll find thousands of paranormal talk shows, paranormal ghost hunters everywhere. And it's all in the last couple of years. It's just mushroomed out, and it's totally crazy.
Yeah. Well, it is, and I consider that part of dark culture under the umbrella of dark culture, dark genre, because I performed at a lot of paranormal events and things. I did the Chicago Ghost Con just last October, And so you're right. It has. It's grown exponentially, and it's huge. And it's part of all of that. I think we're both really in the same business because we like to present dark mystery and the dark mysteries that are in life and the unexplainable things. That's what fascinates me as well. So what you're doing is kind of I'm approaching it from a different angle, but it's in the same place, and we touch so much of the same kind of subject matter. And that's funny about your former station owner there. Coming at your show and in your topic on a that kind of basis, because there's so much of religion that really is based in the supernatural when you get right down to it. So you would think he would that's really kind of congruent with his thinking, but it clearly offended his sensibilities at some point because of the way he framed it in his head. But you're right. Today, it's huge. Horror and dark culture and the paranormal and all of that, especially the paranormal. In the last few years, like you say, it's big. It's big business, and it's a big topic. And I just think, that's what brought me to it, and that's what I always had a love of, because I back to the point when I started doing theatrical magic when I was 8, I was already watching horror films. Especially the old things, the old Universal monster classics and things like that, and then everything else. And some of my favorite stuff is all of those franchises through the 80s, with Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser and Friday the 13th and all of those things, and Halloween, all of those things. I just love that stuff. It was great fun for me. But I think, we all there's something, especially now, even in our tech-based society, because we love our tech and we love our tech toys and we love what tech does for us and we love the ease of it. When, of course, when it's working, it's like anything else. It's great when it works and it sucks when it doesn't, but it's there. And even in that, even based in that technology, because there's so much of that technology that ghost hunters take out in the field with them now. But even in the midst of all that technology, we are driven, I think, more than ever now, to seek out the dark mystery in life. And that fascinates the hell out of me.
Well, you know what, too? A lot of people have stepped up. I kept quiet on a couple things. I ran into a Bigfoot one time, and I talked about this quite a few times on my show. But
really interesting.
I used to manage, after I got out of broadcasting, I got into, because I also love photography. And somehow I became a general manager of a chain of camera stores. And one of my good clients was a medical doctor. He just actually finished his internship. He was into photography. He goes, "Hey, let's go to the Canadian Rockies." And we live up in Washington. I go, "Okay, well, let's do that for a week and a half." We went up to the Canadian Rockies, and we looked for this old World War II Japanese internment camp where they held the war prisoners. And it was about 2 miles off the road. You had to walk through an old cemetery, and that cemetery was about a mile off the road, and it's all forest, all overgrown, and, no roads going to it anymore. And we got there, and there's a couple buildings still kind of halfway standing. We were warned, watch out for bears. And my friend goes, "Hey, look at that giant bear," And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, "God, that's a huge bear." Then I looked through it with my camera with a telephoto lens, and I go, "Hey, Bob, we got a problem." And he goes, "What?" I said, "Hey, take a look through your lens." We realized that was not a bear. It was about like 9-10 feet tall, something like that. It noticed us, and it did the loudest scream I've ever heard in my life. And so we got like really panically scared. And we're running, back, through the forest and through that old cemetery, which was kind of eerie anyway.
Very much, right?
Yeah. And, and it's kind of dark through the forest. We get to the car. Okay, now, I don't know if it was the same Bigfoot or its mate, but we were parked off the side of the road. Okay, the road is not, this was like towards the end of May, maybe first part of June. The road's not heavily traffic, especially that was around 2002. Wasn't much traffic on that road. So we're panicking. I'm getting into the car and starting it. My friend is trying to get his leg in the car. The Bigfoot was off maybe 25 feet from us in the woods, bending a tree over, which was about 25 feet, screaming at us, and it snapped the tree. I'm taking off. My friend's getting, dragged in the car, but I'm that scared. The thing threw a rock, and my wife let me take her brand new car for the trip because she figured my car wouldn't have made it. It hit the